Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast featuring real conversations with conscious objectors to the status quo. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we are talking about vasectomies. Drew comes on to offer his personal experience with the procedure and why he chose to have it. Together, we also talk about being another brick in the wall, the ethical consideration of having children with our current climate change trajectories, and also just the reality that you're never ready for change, ever. And so how do you take those first steps? Y'all, this is an episode you don't want to miss out on, so tune in.
So I suppose, where do we begin?
Your name's Drew.
Yes, I am Drew Smith.
Yes.
I'm just a person living in America, and I'm a white cishet male.
What do you do in your life? What are you passionate about? I hate that question of, what do you work? What did you do for a job? So that's why I was like, I don't want to ask that.
I know, right? It's cool, though, because I finally found a job I enjoy, which is working in the parks department, outdoors. I used to work in an office job, and I kind of, pursued that, took a big pay cut, and got out of there because it was too much, and, I just kind of inherently don't like being the cogs in the wheels of the system.
Yeah.
It just seems boring. It seems like a march, just like what Pink Floyd sings about.
Right. What cog in the system were you?
Insurance, mortgage, just generic, boring, click on computer stuff, do Excel. Mm-hmm. Most jobs nowadays are just in an office clicking on stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good. It provides a living, it provides a wage, it provides insurance, and opportunity for a lot of people. And I was well off, and I still am all right. Yeah. But it's just I just felt dead. Going to the office every day, living that life.
Could you say more?
About working that way?
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, feeling dead,
Mm-hmm. And it was even really privileged in its own right, because my boss was way hands off. I went in late all the time, and I never got in trouble. It was very much a salary position where my job was always done.
Cushy. And
it wasn't very hard, and I didn't have much to do, so I took a lot of liberties. I go to the gym most of the day.
Wow.
It was also very existential, where it's I realized how futile everything was. I was like, here I am in a position doing just a little bit of work, which is all I'm required to do, but still nothing. And even the stuff I do accomplish, what is that? Well, I just helped some back program of insurance connect to another program and another third party. So and it created a lot of weird existentialism at that point in my life. And I was like, what is even, I guess I could do this for 50 more years, but what am I even doing?
Right.
This isn't a thing.
Right.
This can't be real.
How long were you in that space for?
It's 5 to 7 years worth.
Wow.
Depending on where, a couple different jobs downtown in Indy.
Yeah.
One at Chase and then one at One America.
What do you think woke you up to make a change? Because this is not what you're doing now.
No, yeah. And then most of the wake up was just I think just going through that. I'd been married before, and then I got a divorce in the midst of those jobs. And actually, I was actually being let go from one position and going through the divorce. I got a job at the other second place I worked at, which is similar enough. But it was just almost a full decade worth of my life in this area, split down the middle with the divorce, really set me on a new course that was something I never prepared my young mind for. So it's I never foresaw this future for me as a child or as a youngster or even as a young adult. As being, I was about 27, I think, and then going through the divorce, I was almost a fully realized adult, and it's everything you had a vision for, not that I had much, you just don't think about it this way. And then it's this whole job, what is this? What am I doing? What is anything that I like to do? Who am I? What do I enjoy?
Right.
And it all started just very overwhelming, and the job just exemplified.
Exactly.
Look what you're doing, getting paid decent money to just come in and drink coffee.
Right. What did your younger self imagine? How did you see yourself, with a wife and kids, or what was the picture?
Yeah, it kind of is that where it's I was raised by, my parents were great, Christian and Catholic, and mostly just not very overbearing about any regard, which was very nice. My parents are very rational and laid out a pretty rational plan for a lot of things that we did. My brother and I kind of just bought into it. And it was kind of that really easy, really run-of-the-mill average American, just it all kind of was all right and never had very many problems. Yeah. Just we're just worried about who we're going to date or math tests are failing, or something like that, So my younger self, never really actively thought about it, but it always just kind of envisioned my life will be good in the future. Look, my parents are happy and married, so I didn't think that that's what I would have, but I'm sure my brain was being conditioned to see just two people that got along. And I just saw things just worked.
Right.
and they're efficient at being parents, and we were efficient at, like, as a family unit. It just kind of worked. So it's kind of like, yeah, this will all just work. I'll just sit in my canoe and just float down the river. And then the whole job and the divorce thing was going on. And then, like, the divorce thing was rough, but I kind of got over it by, like, actually subconsciously I realized, I was like, oh, this is incredibly liberating. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go through that pain and trauma of, like, realizing it, which is a whole process that we all go through. But, like, it allowed me to finally take that final step into something that's kind of baseline my whole life. It was like, who actually am I?
Yeah.
Because I never really liked the plan laid out by any indoctrinated religion or parental or school, or name something that could condition you to follow a path.
Right.
And it's kind of, I've always kind of like just shunned it, but also like walked it because I just like to be an introvert and not have to deal with any problems. But in the same token, it was like, it finally gave me that open door to, like, all right, world's open. You have nothing tied you to anything at all. And this job is completely dumb.
This is the existential crisis when you hit that moment of what is my meaning in the world. So
it's like a lot of us get to that, point, become overwhelmed. It was like the other side of that. The rise of, like, oh, this whole world is mine if I want to.
Yes, exactly.
Not even like in an ego way, just more like, oh, I can go check out anything I want to do right now.
Right, exactly.
It was cool.
So how'd you wake up, though, right? Like, was there such time spent in that world living with those values with so much pain or suffering?
No,
like, what was going on?
I'm a happy person.
Yeah,
I never I've never really been sad until, like, recently in my life when I've, like, started to look at the world as the way it is. But it's like, you kind of go through the world just like, you go to school, you do good in your test because that's what you got to do because you got to get into college. And you just do your homework, you go play basketball after school, you hang out with your friends, you try to find someone who can buy you alcohol on the weekends. You find someone's basement to drink in or some woods to go build a fire in. It's like, you play basketball. And you go to school and you play basketball. And it's kind of like, that was just like life. And it's like, it was fun. It was fine.
Yeah.
But then, like, there's an awakening point where you hit going through what I went through and just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'm an adult now. I have stuff. And
yeah, I think I want to probe there even deeper.
Sure.
Because the awakening, I think, well, so you're talking about how the divorce and the job really did that. But people can stay in that location and be completely immobile and afraid of changing from where they're at because there is security in what has already been established.
Yeah, and I suffer from that a lot.
Yeah.
Most people do, and it's very, I'm a Taurus, so it's kind of like anything that's changed, I'm like, I gotta get off the couch and learn something new.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a pain in the ass. But it's like, it's just part of life is getting over it. But the trick is it's kind of trying to really evaluate who you are and what your needs are and realizing it's like, is this something I've just been conditioned into walking this path for? Or do I want to even be on it? Do I want to do it? Or do I want to continue on it? Because there's also that where it's like, yeah, this is the right decision for me. The divorce specifically helped me figure out how I emote and how I communicate in the world more often. Where you start to figure out needs where it's like, my partner was fine and we were actually in love, but it was also like a love that wasn't based on anything because it's like you meet when you're young and you're both attractive in college and you date because it's fun, there's flirt, and then you just continue because it works because you're both responsible. Going forward, I need to reevaluate how this stuff is processed inside of me subconsciously as opposed to just going off what I feel and what I think.
Right.
I'm more being awake, you know what I mean? You can actually be aware of what you're doing, kind of thing.
Yeah, they talk about the relationship escalator. Have you heard this term? It's like just basically exactly what you're talking about of just like, oh, you date here and then you fall in love and then you get married and then you have kids. And if you don't hit those like milestones, you're not necessarily like meeting, you know, the ideal relationship.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like we pressure ourselves. Like we're almost like we both had the same values, but we both had the same needs. So it's kind of like I couldn't provide for her what she needed because she needed what I needed to provide. We're both just like the wrong sides, you know. We just didn't match, which was fine. Wow. So it's kind of like it just took a minute to realize that because like everything in what was love, which was kind of love, but it was also just masking the idea of like we get along and we function.
But obviously, proposing, wedding day, this is not what's going through your head.
When?
When you got married to this person, right?
Oh, I was stoked.
Exactly, that's what...
Yeah, because it's all good and gravy. Because that was the thing, I didn't know what love languages were then. I didn't have the lexicon or the codex to like understand that like this is how life functions. It's more than just hey, I met this person, they're an attractive woman, we're going to do a thing, we're going to hang out and meet the parents. We'll function, we'll continue on dates. Well, time has passed. Time to get married. Well, time has passed. Time to do this. And then eventually, you know, it's like buy a house, have kids, do that, retire, go to Florida, you know, die. And it's kind of like, is that the plan?
Yeah.
Is that the playbook?
So I'm intrigued then. What do you feel like you learned from the divorce that like is affecting
to
how
listen.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Exactly. It's like listening.
That's ironic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly it. That's it.
Because you're currently.
I thought about this question. I think about it a lot.
Really? Yeah.
It's like, what have you learned to listen to
Can
people?
okay, tell me more.
Even if you think you're smart, you think you know you've got going on and you got the right answer, it's like, but like you really got to listen to what people are not only saying, but like what they're saying without saying things. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like for example, like I've had partners that suffer with anxiety kind of thing, and that before I had like any idea what that meant for the world, I kind of just projected my own feelings upon it and just like didn't really listen because I didn't really suffer from it, so I didn't get it. And I'm like, what's the problem? It's like, just do this, do that. And it's like, yeah, but there's a thing behind it, Drew, that you're not understanding. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like when I say listen, it's more like grasp what that person's really trying to get across, and not so much like just the words that they're saying, but like, and not even the body language that they're admitting. Those are just forms of communication.
Right.
I'm talking about all of it, what they're coming from and who they are. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's like, had I done that earlier, we would have just broken up a couple years in.
Oh, you think so?
Well, I mean, yeah. I think that's the thing. I think anyone with the knowledge they know now about stuff, not so much a hindsight,
yeah,
but if you learn these, I kind of refer to them as tools almost. Like learn about love languages like as a tool to me. Where I'm like,
sure,
oh, cool,
yes.
a way to explain something, a way to understand
a language.
This psyche and emotional connection that we have to make that can't be really written down anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's just a system of tools to understanding traumas and love languages and how this person functions to their core.
Right.
And not so like you can just know about them for the sake of that knowledge, but to truly understand them in their times of need. Mm. Because like if you're not providing for them in their times of need, then it's kind of like that's really up to how much you would like to with your own consent to provide. But it's also like if you're going to sign up for a relationship or a marriage, then like you should probably be fully open to fulfilling all those needs emotionally and spiritually and physically. And
but then it's tricky because where do you call in that independence of like your partner needs to be able to fulfill their needs on their own? Mm-hmm. So then it gets tricky. They should be able to do that and we should be there. I don't know. Well, and as you were saying that, I was thinking about something that I know we talked about. My understanding of the world is so drastically different than your understanding of the world because we are two unique individuals that have had a history of different life experiences that shape how we exist, how we understand language, how we understand all of this. So like when you put that sort of dynamic into a partnership, you have to understand that they're coming from a whole different view of the world. You see eye to eye on a lot of stuff and you have values, but like truly how they see that, like we'll never understand. Regardless of our deepest attempts to understand other people, we can't.
Exactly.
Which I think is beautiful, right? As someone like going into the field of psychology, there was someone who I had talked to like early on who I was just like, how would I ever have therapy with someone who's older than me, right? Like how could I ever understand their experience? Yeah, and he gave me some great advice and he was like, well, you don't. And that's the thing is you ask them, okay, I recognize that I don't get fully your world, so please tell me.
Yeah, and it's almost like that's the trick because it's like you almost go into it, try not to like be a therapist for, but just try to relate. Just be like a not so much a mirror, but trying to think of a word, but just a way for them to help understand themselves better, almost in a way. Because it's like you definitely couldn't relate to someone who's 80 because you haven't gone through like all those experiences.
Nothing.
But the time periods have changed to even be 10 years apart, but 50 years apart. You know, like the decades of how the context of their life in a different era as well, and this time frame as well. But like, so the trick would be like, I think, to be straddle the middle ground, like just allow them to understand their own thoughts. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the trick with a relationship, I think, is like not so much inject my values into a partner, but to allow them to see the lessons that I've learned in my own existence. Mm-hmm. If I can. You gotta let someone else figure it out. Mm-hmm. And not so much like don't give them advice, like let them fail. It's more of you gotta find a way for someone to understand it in the way that they understand it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's cool if you're explaining something in a way that makes sense to you, but like the point of being like, to be supportive and listen truly in the partnership is are you allowing that partner to truly be who they are? Mm-hmm. And give them a stage, not so much subservient, but just like allowing them a space to grow.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think in the same way, like when you talk about existentialism and the meaning, right? Like once you figure out everything, there is no objective meaning, then you see the beauty in the fact that from there you can create it. And in the same way where you might never understand fully the perspective of another human, great. what a beautiful story to continually ask and like learn more from. It's a never ending experience. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times, like some of the writers that talk about even like sexual chemistry and these other pieces, have you heard of Esther Perel? She wrote this book, Mating in Captivity, and it sometimes talks about how like we make this failed assumption when we think we understand our partners fully. And in that we like lose our sexual attraction because we just assume we know all of it, versus like recognizing that this is a completely dynamic human that is always going to be evolving and changing just like you. And in that you could find like deeper sexual fulfillment.
Yeah, and like what even at a larger even viewpoint, what a terrible way to be a scientist, to assume you're an expert in a field that knows all things in this field. And then when you apply it to relationships or sexual experience, it's like so much heavier price to pay for being inevitably wrong.
For sure.
That you know everything about what's going on right now, especially with another person. So it's like, be careful when you assume that you're like, I know everything about this partner. It's like, oh, you're going to pay the price. Wrong really heavily.
Well, right, and there is some reality to like the longer you spend with someone, the more you might learn about them, and then it's tricky because like just as humans, we love structure, we love repetition, we love these things that ground us. So we create schemas in our brain. Like this is who this person is. Like we really like to. I know, regardless.
We love it.
Exactly.
We love it.
Yeah, we just put things in boxes. This is this. This is coded as that, and then we hate when it's really more of this
like predictability.
Exactly, which makes sense, right? Like as you know, animals that need
stability.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense. So it's like, and equally, we also have the cognitive capacities to rise above this. So how do we use that responsibly and not torture ourselves in the process?
And it's like how easy is it to be a toxic partner when like say your partner's having like an anxiety attack and you're able to reduce it to like, oh, there she goes again.
Oh yeah.
It's like what a thing you hear so much of in relationships and on TV shows, and it's like that. Not so much that phrasing with that example, but that attitude of just kind of like, there's my partner being a whatever. And it's like, are you really understanding what's going on? Do you really? And even if you don't, do you care?
Yep.
And if you don't, that's fine, I guess, because you're not required to care about anyone. But why are you in this relationship?
Yeah, I think as humans, we love narratives. So when something like that comes up, we want to put it into the context of like, my partner is acting this way because of this past thing. So here's a narrative. I'm going to project all of it. And they talk about how like, we're naturally going to do that to try and make sense of our meaning. But when you are projecting about your partners, it's best to try and project them in the most positive light you can, right?
Because the opposite's what they do. And it's like a sense of elitism where it comes from more. Because like when you do that thing where it's like, oh, that's them doing that.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of knowledge and power. And you're like, well, I knew that was going to happen. It gives you that cynical, snide view of the world where you're like, I'm smarter than these people because I figured it out. It's like, gross.
And for sure. and I know like, truly romantic sexual relationships are different than platonic relationships, but equally they're very similar in a lot of ways. Like, could you imagine if you had a best friend that you looked at that way, where every time you went to hang out with them, you're like, oh, they're doing this again? It's like we don't do that. We choose to hope and believe in the positive narratives of the people around us, but somehow with partners or live-in partners, you know, married, whatever, you know,
changes.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yes, and I think we forget that a lot of that's like discipline.
Yeah, it is. I would say it's discipline. It's a good word for it.
Yeah, of choosing to see the best side. Because now you currently live with someone that you've been with for a long time.
It's a responsibility at that point even, you know, because it's like you owe it to people if you're going to commit to this lifestyle.
So how do you exist in your relationship now?
That's a good question. It's interesting because some days I don't feel like it's that much different, and then I start to feel guilty about myself.
Ooh, yeah.
But then sometimes I like stop and have to think, and I'm like, no, this is a valid emotion to share and feel. So it's like it's all give and take. Where it's like, because I just have I guess to answer your question, I have way less pride about whatever it is we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like not in like a sense where I'm shameful now. I think that's where people view it as like opposite of pride is shame, and I think pride is kind of generally more of a negative quality to be possessed a lot of times. Because part of being a partnership is, it's not so much a sacrifice of self, it's more just like, you enter into a team, and that's a sacrifice, is the pride of like, I don't want to help because I shouldn't have to. It's like, that's where it's like, if you help, we both win. Or if you don't help, we both lose. So it's like, come on, like that's just it. So that's where I come into a lot more, is just like keeping that elitism at bay, keeping that pride at bay, listening more.
Do you feel like the socialization of male constructs and norms really led into that as well?
Naturally, I've always kind of like not really naturally occupied those roles. I have much more androgynous lifestyles and viewpoints and much more feminine qualities, and this new partnership allows me to foster those more. Having known some of these things may have helped my previous relationships for sure.
How has it felt to accept the more androgynous sides of yourself?
Freeing. It's never like I've ever been trapped, but just more like it all makes more sense now. Like specifically in my partnership, I'm very much the dishes, laundry guy.
I love it, yes.
I take out the trash, I clean the counters, like I clean the pieces, and it's just like, not that my partner doesn't help at all. They mow the grass, mostly. And I just throw a fit and make it fun. Like, I do mow the grass too. But just kind of like a thing where like, I'm gonna just mock it in a joking way.
And even that's like external things that you're doing. And I think even accepting more of the feminine, like intrinsic qualities of yourself. How has that been? It's
been nice to just understand, because you live in a world where it's kind of like if you have any kind of feelings, you're a wimp. Being as much of a sad person as I've always kind of been internally, just kind of like it's making more sense to realize you're like, oh, you just have much more empathy around you at all times. And not so much like, oh, I care and cry at movies, but it's like, I just worry. You know what I mean? I got that mother's worry heart kind of thing. Right. It's like, oh, cool.
I feel like I want to hear what you would say to your younger self.
Yeah. So I don't want to overspeak because that's the thing. Like, I never really had any much questioning about myself as a kid.
Yeah.
I just never really thought about it. To any kid that's like worried about any of those feelings of feeling more androgynous or feminine in any regard, like go ahead and just embrace it because the world's changing. Whatever those qualities are, just figure out how to harness whatever good comes with it and whatever evil comes with it. Because like everything has all the sides of everything.
And in doing that, you feel so much more joy because you're living your authentic life. There is a selfish, amazing component to this that you feel happier. And then by doing so, you're able to love other people better equally. I mean, it's a win-win.
You set yourself up for more success by filling in half the blanks already.
Right. But then dealing with the criticism, but knowing that it's worth it. And eventually you'll find your community.
And it's easier to deal with the criticism when you know who you are.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
And you do it from a place not out of anger, but out of like self-worth and sense of like justice.
Right.
Like just not caring. Find people who accept you and love you for who you are.
It's so hard though when you don't see those people, right?
Yeah.
Like we live this life or we live on this is going to get really
I love it.
metaphorical.
I love it.
But when you're driving, when you're exploring the world, like you look out and all you can see is what's directly around you. But you equally know that we live on a globe, we live on a round rock, curved, not flat earth. I know, right? But you can't see the whole earth. Right? This is something that you have to trust.
I love this point.
I know. And so I was trying to think about in that trust, you're trusting in the abundance of the earth that is beyond what you can currently see. And I was trying to tell myself this in the relationship of getting over someone that's been very painful, that even though I can't see the beautiful relationships that I will create in the future, I have to trust. Knowing that it's around.
Yeah, exactly.
I just can't see it. And in the same way, when you're stuck in these places of not being able to find friends, because when I was younger, I never thought that I would find the friends that I felt so authentic with, because you were just looking within our perspective of, this school or this community and trusting that there's so much more people out there where you can be your authentic self and be loved and embraced for those qualities.
That's a very helpful sentiment to take into it. I think trying to find who you are and being yourself with a capital S allows you higher opportunities and probability to just find those people.
Oh yeah.
So it's like pat yourself on the back, give you a hug. There are plenty of people out here to help, and I can find my tribe. And then the trick is jump in and then swim where you need to be swimming to. And then those people will surround you. You'll find those people along the way. And it's you won't fill yourself with. I think I got to the point before I met my current partner, she's my best friend, and I couldn't imagine a human I get along with better. 99% luck is just what it is, I think, most of the time. But the only 1% I can give my own credit is I just kind of just threw myself into places that I like to be. And it's it wasn't some sort of prophetic, romantic movie kind of vibe. I just quit caring in the sense of I would rather it never work out than to do it half-assed. I've been in bullshit relationships that weren't even abusive, just lame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just weak and not needed.
For sure.
So it's I'd rather die than ever do that again.
Yeah.
So it's if someone walks into my life that's the perfect partner, bet.
I even want to push you a little bit for a reframe. It's not that you stopped caring.
Yeah.
You started caring actually a lot more about specific values, right? Like
there you go.
authenticity, honesty, communication. Those became so much more than like external validation.
Mm-hmm.
So like it sounds like you started caring a lot and about the things that resonated with you.
It was just, I think I started caring about my boundaries and my limitations of what I needed as a person.
Yes.
It's like, when they walk in, they'll walk in.
Yeah.
Like, until then, there's no hard feelings for no one else. It's like...
So where does the vasectomy play into this timeline? Was the vasectomy with the first marriage, after?
My relationship with wanting kids growing up was kind of like, yeah, it'll happen if it happens. Somewhere when I was older, I just started like, yeah, I don't want kids, because you get more militant and like egotistical, young adult male who's like, I'm king of the world, I can do whatever I want. And it's like, I don't want kids. And most people go through that phase where it's like, I don't want any children.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, it stuck more. And it kind of got to the point where I just didn't want them. And I think I'm just a little selfish in a lot of regards.
Excuse me. Okay.
Yes.
Let's pause. Why are you selfish to not want kids?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's more the idea, it's like, I'd rather just do what I want to do.
Why is that selfish?
It's not.
Exactly.
Right.
Who do we owe this life to? I get, like, if you believe in a religious structure that says, God, and this is a part of your meaning to propagate the species of followers of your religion, then you might be selfish to not have kids.
And that's the thing. It's like, I say selfish more so catering to the commonality belief that this is a selfish thing.
That's what I'm saying. It's not.
Because it's held up by religion, indoctrination.
Yeah. You know what? Let's reframe. I'm going to say this is the most selfless act that you could do because you're trying to save the world and reproduce less.
You could very well frame it that way. And it's some of the incentive, honestly. Personally, I find a lot of fulfillment in that I'm getting out of the way in that regard, where it's kind of like I see the ship where it's headed, and I'd rather just not even get a lifeboat, I'm just going to watch the sun go down. Yeah.
And even in that, I'm sure, it's not like you're without family. Yeah. Family is so dynamic. It does not have to be, biological.
It's like, I've got a lot of people want to have family, and it gives them great, incredible amounts of fulfillment in thousands of ways. Yes. And they should do it if they want to. Mm-hmm. But like the intermediate population of who maybe on the fence or something, it's like the thing about this, it is kind of okay to question a lot of these indoctrination beliefs. It's like, 'cause there's I've always been kind of socially deviant.
This is the Moby Dick, right? This is the white whale.
The white whale.
The white whale. The white whale that is elusive. We keep telling people like, oh, once you get married, you'll be happy. Yeah, right. Once you have kids, you'll be happy. Well, now once the kids get out of the house, you'll be happy. Exactly, and then it's like, well, when I retire now, because you're in your 50s, 60s, you'll be happy. And then
and it's one of those things where it's like, I follow these, you see those all the time, and it's like, and I have friends like that, and they're great, and it's like, and they are happy.
Yes, there is yes.
And it's like, I think that's the problem, is like, I'm too cynical.
I mean, neither of us are parents, so it's really tricky to like comment on these things. Yeah. But they talk about the concept of parenting really only becoming this really big structured thing in the 70s. And onward, which is such a tragedy. I've recorded with some other, when I recorded with Nat, they talked about it. Just this concept that parenting has to be this specific way. We definitely have these cookie cutter expectations.
That could go away too.
Yeah, of like, this is what a parent does.
You can definitely drink 12 beers at a kid's, softball game or with them at the lake. It's like, that definitely happens.
All the time. Exactly. And then,
I bet parents need to do coke in the bathroom and, come out and then push the kids in the swing. Seeing it happen.
Yeah, there's definitely, we talked about that divide of the concept of this is what a good parent does and how that can deeply pull you away from your authenticity, which always makes me wonder, and I don't know if you feel the same way, where I'm like, am I against the idea of children because it seems like a loss of my authentic self in some way, when really maybe that's just letting go of another societal expectation, tell me that if I had a kid, it would have to be this way.
There is a lot that you have to pour into a kid, though.
Oh my God.
It's almost
so much time.
I know you came to yourself, but it's almost like I'm not even worried I would ever lose myself. It's just more like, it comes back to this, like, I don't want to work that hard.
Mm-hmm. Which is fine.
I don't want to do
Not everyone has to become a doctor and work 100 hours a week. I've been leaning more towards the concept of me having kids, so maybe,
There's always that idea where it's like, I could gas myself up into it.
I'm just not ready for this right now at all, right? Not even close, but I do think when I think about the shortness of our lives and just truly when you zoom out to the grandness of the earth, we're just these really small beings that are just going to become dust. And in that, like, what love and capacity could I pass on to another human? Like, just like the deepest relationship and maybe the family structure that I wish I could have had. And like in that, obviously, yes, time, so much you invest, but do you in turn reap a beauty that you would never know if you had not invested that energy, love, and devotion? So every parent says, right? But like, obviously the reality is once you're a parent, you can't unbe a parent. So they're biased interviewers. Like, we don't truly know.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
You know?
Both of us are biased. Both of us
For
are
sure.
biased on both sides.
Exactly.
They're like, well, we know it's like 9 kids. But it's like, no, you've never really gone through it where it's like
Yeah.
you've actually seen that to fruition.
It's probably like that one speech I told you about the monogamy where they had like referenced that like, oh, you choose monogamy, you get bored, but you build a deep, loving relationship. Or you choose polyamory, you have chaos and jealousy, but it's always dynamic. And you're like, pick one, they both suck. And I'm sure it's the same thing in its own way with kids, right? Like, you lose a lot of time, you invest this and all that and have to be responsible for that, but you enjoy the love.
A lot of what you just stated, you need to address that inside yourself. All of like the fulfillment, the spreading your joy into a person, becoming yourself, seeing yourself reflected, reflecting themselves and you, and learning. Like,
I would assume before you decide whether you want to have kids or not, it's important to check in that having kids won't solve your existential crisis.
Yeah.
It won't, just like that perfect marriage won't make your life
and that's the thing.
work.
And that's the thing from the two sides of the argument thing that we're doing, where it's like, on one hand, you need to have kids because it's like, what else are you going to do? And that's sometimes you got to come to those terms where like, but on one hand, that'd be so cool. It's like, what if the little junior had a softball game to go to today? You know, so it'd be fun. I'm such like a nihilist and a scared introvert myself anyway, but I'm always like, yeah, but you know what else going to go through? Like him striking out, him getting cut, getting broken up with at school, getting beat up or getting, made fun of or not being good at something. And it's like, just like the existential pain of existing. It's also like you pass it on to another human where now they're alive and they got to go through what you go through.
It's interesting. I hate that I always fucking say that on this podcast as I've gone through editing. Every single time I go to say something, it's interesting. And then I just like say some idea. Yeah. And so when I was consciously editing, I was like, you're not going to do this anymore. You got this. Okay, so this is just an existential philosophical question. So when I recorded with the pastor, or when I recorded with the bishop, I was telling her my qualms with God. That one of my like philosophical questions that I was always a little bit angry about was that why would God create it all if this world has so much suffering? Like if he would have just never created anything, there would have been no pain and there would have been no joy. It would have just been net neutral. Like from a utilitarian standpoint of like, if we're just weighing out pros, cons, all the suffering, why would God create it all? And then as you're speaking, talking about like the woes of life, of like, your son striking out of the game, all these other things, I'm thinking like, damn, I am just in the position of God in the sense of like, do I want to create this other being that is going to go through pain and suffering? And I'm subjecting it to the reality that there will be pain. Like,
there's now a whole camera to have opinions and perspective upon and feelings and
is that fair? Well, I think that's a lot of the ethical questions now that people like our age are having if just like given the world's current trajectory with climate change, is it ethical to bring in a child that might have to suffer the ramifications of generations?
And that's the thing, like, before you said all that, it's a question.
Exactly.
What you just said, it's I
know.
Like, it's not even like, oh man, worry about Johnny, not making the school team or Susie doing this, or it's like, I hope my children will have jobs. I hope my children will have property to purchase.
I hope they have air
to breathe. Water to like not be subsidized by Nestle.
I wonder that, and then I'm like, have years of like people just always been saying this, like the world's gonna burn, and we're just those people saying the world's gonna burn, but truly it's gonna exist for a lot longer than we think.
There's that old timer thing talk, and I do that a lot because I'm very.
I don't want to be the old people.
But for years, back in the day when they had like naked guys running around with signs to the end is near, they also didn't have corroborated scientific studies showcasing that the oceans are rising in an astronomical rate.
Yes, climate change research is very real. We are not questioning that. Luckily, I'm like young enough for my reproductive window. If I choose to carry a child, that I could. Like I still have many years to decide.
That's stressful too. It's like as the window of adulthood becomes like a higher platform.
Yes. And I think this is where it all
panic that probably comes in.
Yes. I think this is where it all comes to be related for me in my mind of questions of like meaning, authenticity, these conversations we have about, you know, divorce and the meaning you take from there and the meaning you make from kids, like, and the question of should we be listening to societal thinking at all, right? Like all these things are passed down value systems that have been passed down because we're social creatures and that this has been given to us. The reality is this is a fundamentally different time than any other time in society because survival is no longer difficult. And now with all the modern age that we have so much leisure time that we are asking questions of how do we find meaning in that leisure time. And this has never been done before. So looking back to like concepts like marriage, children, these things, like, yes, we are social beings. There's a beauty and connection, all those things. But like, we still have so much leisure time that it's going to freak us out if you don't choose to like make meaning.
There's a lot of reasons to have kids a long time ago, and those reasons are lessening now because like you don't own a farm.
Okay,
you
exactly.
Don't have hands on the house to do it all, like the milking and like the dishes.
Exactly.
We got dishwashers.
Yes.
Like it's not dangerous anymore to live. It's so safe. So like
I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they talk about like it's like this psychological blah blah whatever, but basically the main one of the main takeaways is that you can only move up in your needs and perspective once you secure the basics. So when you are so, you know, worried about shelter, food, water, you cannot think about what is the meaning of my existence because your baseline needs have not been met. And so I just think we've reached so much higher on that now, where we have so many of these other pieces where now our questions are not just like, where's water, food for the winter? It is now like, why am I here? And that's why existentialism was created, was really like more recently modern, because this is the modern problem of humanity.
You're speaking on.
Yeah.
If you want to have kids, cool, we're running out of tickets. You can have mine. And that's kind of where like some of my incentive comes in. It's not even some sort of like honorable sense where I'm doing that for people. It's just more like
the all or nothing marriage I read really talked about a lot. You would love to read this. It talks about the social like change through industrialization and how that changed our concept of marriage, because I'm studying the non-monogamy piece. It doesn't talk too much about kids. It does talk about like the decline as we got more industrialization and needed less people on farms.
It's like I don't need 10 because
exactly.
I'm going to die of malaria. It's like,
right. Exactly.
I just need 2 because I just need 2, and like that's all we really do anymore.
Right, exactly. And so because of that, things have changed. And then the author also looks at monogamy, and then at the same time is like, oh, like things are changing now. So it's actually a really interesting book I'd recommend. Albeit, main critique does not even mention polyamory as really like an option. So one day I'll write the commentary on that book. No, it actually came out just recently, like a few articles. I just think that most mainstream culture, they'll talk about swinging, but not necessarily give it the full possibility. Like, I think he basically says, like, marriage is in this rut. Here are the things that you can do to be better versus, like, well, maybe you would open it up. Like,
I almost attribute that stuff sometimes to, like, no one's ready for it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, I think in the same way of, like, the rise of non-binary identity in younger generations, like where we're at of understanding will always now be a little bit disconnected from the people below us. Yeah. And like the people who are writing the books now are like a generation above, and we're like
slow to pick up.
Yeah.
It's sad. I wish we go faster, and it's like tough to figure out, but it is that way. But it's like it's always on a delay.
Well, then you should get on TikTok.
Do what?
You should get on TikTok.
On TikTok.
No, I'm serious. I mean, I'm saying that to myself too. Like, if we want to become, like, to a degree, right? If we want to become socialized with, like, the, you know, modern ideas, it's not necessarily we're going to find that from, like, the younger generations below us. We're not going to find that on a news article. Like, that's written from people our age and above.
As much we can play with the old timers, not get
exactly. That's why I'm.
Minutes we're gonna be old timers.
Exactly. So I'm like, damn, maybe I should get on TikTok and like just try to understand the psychology.
All I do is Facebook and Instagram.
I will reel us back in a little bit. So you decide you're going through this procedure. Did you do this when you were single? Did you do this when you were with a partner?
I have recently with my current partner.
Oh, okay.
And they actually were very helpful in like the whole process.
Yeah.
And, like, they were very, 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 very not pushy. There's always like the scare of like being sexually active or single, of like just getting real pregnant, and like that kind of thing was a massive. It caused me to stop having sex in a lot of ways. Like my sexual health declined, and my personal health was down. So it's like I wouldn't pursue people, or I'm way too pragmatic and too much of a safety kind of guy.
Yeah.
Sounds like I'm advocating abstinence.
No.
It's like I'm not. I was actually frustrated in my abstinence kind of thing. It's like more self-imposed, and like I don't want to get pregnant. I'm just nervous about this. So it's like
that makes sense.
Really push like I don't want kids, get a vasectomy. What the hell? It's like,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, cool. Now that risk is gone.
Yeah.
And like, then you can just worry about STIs, which is still an issue, but like manageable.
I think what makes you unique is why you chose to take on that responsibility to remove the variable, because for years it's been put on people who have vulvas and ovaries.
And for one, it's a selfish thing where I'm like, cool, I'm set. Not happened to me ever.
Yeah.
It also gives agency to my partners, because I know a lot of I know most people struggle in general with birth control.
Yeah.
Trying to find something that works. It doesn't mess them up. If I'm going to stand up here and like try to be a good representation for men, being who I am with my values and the game that I talk and the shit that I talk about, then at least stand up and then like at least get the job done. So a lot of it was that decision too, and not so much my current partner pushing it, but more like my own incentive of like, you know what, I can also just gift and not like gift with any sense of return.
Right.
Just complete like, I can just take this off their plate.
Right.
And now they can pursue what they want to do. And honestly, as far as I'm aware, it's since then, they've been completely way happier.
Doesn't have to take a hormonal or anything.
Or anything pervasive or anything aggressive that causes problems. And it's like, how many people do you know that complain about that stuff, that have issues, and severe or otherwise? And it's like, now it's like there's options now to like, to do whatever you need to do. So it's like, that helps me. And it gives me a sense of like, a little bit of self-worth even. Like, talk about purpose, and it's like, oh, my purpose is like I made it easier on other people around me.
Which is meaningful.
So if I ever, even this partner, any other partner, now it's like, you can do whatever you need to do.
Did it hurt?
So as far as when it comes to the action, I talked to my doctor. I speak, like I said, from a white cishet hetero male. I'm insured. It costs about $800 after insurance, which is pretty reasonable.
Not bad.
There's a lot of stigma that you'll hear, like guys that say that there was resistance to it. I had a buddy who actually went in and he was like 23, asked for a vasectomy, and the doctor told him no. Men get turned away, and it's because young male who can make a baby and he doesn't want to, and like they're not only going to be judged and questioned why, I'm not going to be allowed to. Yeah. But like my advice is, go to your doctor, be direct about your needs. Yeah. If they're going to resist you on this, then they're not the right doctor for you, and that's my opinion on that. Yeah. And I don't want to get into doctors or talking about our heroes right now, but it's like, as far as this goes, and it comes to this kind of reproductive health,
you have the yes.
Can I say fuck the Catholic Church on this podcast?
Oh my, you can do whatever you want on this podcast.
Fuck the Catholic Church.
There you go. Amen.
That's mostly all that indoctrination stuff comes from, as far as this goes, like not being able to have kids. But I get really militant on that, because like that's my body, right? And that's my right as an autonomous human to do what I want to do with it.
I agree. You should not have to face that stigma. No one should have to.
Whoever's getting this, you're probably really nervous.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I was. Terrifying. Just do a bunch of questions and really ready yourself for all the things you need to talk about and think about as a person, and all these things are questions of your purpose and reasonings and self-judgment and shame.
Right.
It's like, go ahead and make sure you're there, like, and do that stuff.
And also acknowledging that you'll never fully be there. Like, this is a new experience. You're going into, hold space for the reality that you will be scared, and that's part of it. Don't try to fight that.
Quote unquote, I'm not sure I'm ready to have kids. Oh, you'll never be ready to have kids. I'm not sure I'm ready to have a vasectomy. Oh, you'll never be ready to have a vasectomy.
Exactly, right. All these moves we make.
Yeah, like, so it works both ways.
Yes, so don't like think that you need to be fully secure in everything before you do really action.
Exactly, just make sure you've done
that's impossible.
The Jedi training on like, who am I?
Yes.
Will I judge myself? Am I being irrational? Will I want kids?
Yeah.
Will I regret this? Should I...
To the best of your abilities.
Yes, like get yourself prepped at least to know those questions are going to come up.
Sure. I know. I've been fighting this lately where I get like stressed out about stuff like interviews, and I have to accept like, this is normal. This is part of it. And yeah, exactly. And acknowledging that like, no, that's going to happen. You're going to get nervous to get up there and speak. And in accepting that, it gets so much easier.
Exactly,
so like,
right?
I always want to push that where I'm like, yes, you'll be scared.
You'll be
great.
Nervous.
Yeah, good. Check you're alive.
You're going to go in and they're going to put a needle and a knife on your testicles. Like, that's why you're nervous.
Yeah.
That's why.
Wait, so did they sedate you?
Yeah. So basically, so back to it. So you go in there, the doctor comes in, he gives you a spiel, and it's basically just like, you sure? It takes about 20 minutes.
Damn.
Tops.
Damn.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. The hard part, that feels like you got a needle.
Really?
It hurts. It's awkward. It's terrifying. You're on your back with your knees, like, so your feet up and your knees up. Your needle's one, that one hurts like a needle, and it sucks. Yep. Second needle goes in, it sucks too, but not as bad. Kind of like going to the dentist to get Novocaine. It's like, it feels like that, but on your balls. So it's not fun. Then the blade, so he takes the blade.
Wait. Hold on. Hold on.
Sorry, yeah, it goes. So this is the thing. It goes. It just happens.
Okay, so are you looking at... Could you see?
I couldn't see anything.
I was like, did they drape? Yeah, I was going to say, I hope you weren't watching because that sounds horrible.
I was my breathing. He chit-chatted. Like, we just chit-chatted through the thing. Talked about just random stuff. You know, it was COVID time, so it's like, how about this COVID? How about this weather? You know, that garbage. So the needles go in, and that's the
local anesthetic, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how did it hit pretty quickly?
So he takes the blade, and so he lasts about 30 seconds, and he takes the blade and he touches it. He goes, how about that? I go, nope, and he goes to work. So we just chit-chat through it. Like I said, it takes like 10 minutes after he does that. So
wow.
You're halfway done, is my point. So I was thinking, so the proverbial question is like, do you feel nothing else after that?
Yeah.
You feel the needles. The only thing that's weird during the procedure is, in order to cut the vas deferens, he makes an incision and he pulls the vas deferens little tube out a little bit. You feel that. Not so much as a pain, but you feel the physical sensation.
Ooh.
So that's part of the existential and mental prep you have to go in doing that, is remind yourself that you're a mechanism.
Yeah.
You're a series of tubes and pulleys and pumps, and
you
will feel physical matter being pulled around down there. He cuts the vas deferens and they cauterize it shut. So you smell the little tube being burned off. So that was kind of like, I'm really dark. So it's kind of like that metaphorical, like, the last of my seed wafted off into the AC vents.
I hope it smelled good.
So like burnt hair.
Like just burning flesh.
Burnt flesh.
That's what it
Tiny
is.
amount.
Amazing.
Just, if you can sit for a tattoo for 5 hours, you can get a vasectomy and not in blink.
I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, needle in my scrotum, though. Like, absolutely not.
I would imagine that 90% of the breaking point for people getting a vasectomy is just that. What you just said. It's exactly what you'd expect, but it's exactly not as bad as it actually is. Because every time you ever get a shot and it's gone, it's like any pain, it lasts 2 seconds.
Exactly.
They make a tiny 1/4-inch incision, and they snip off a tiny little 2-millimeter tube, and they sew you back up.
This moment, of a sharp needle compared to people who have had to take hormonal birth control for years and suffer breakouts, weight gain, their concept of self being different because the hormones affect their brain and their existence.
You get stuck.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So it's like,
fucking suck it up. People have been doing this for years. It's your turn.
If you can
sign up.
I can't even compare it to a tattoo.
Oh, really? Is a tattoo worse?
I mean,
I don't have any, so I don't know.
Only because it takes 10 hours.
Yeah, of that pain compared to like a second.
Like, if you can sit for a tattoo, it's like, Christ, you can sit for a vasectomy.
That's going to be the title.
Yeah.
If you can have a tattoo, you can get a vasectomy.
You can sit for a vasectomy. You can sit for a tattoo.
Exactly. Awesome.
That being said, as far as pain goes, you're sore as fuck.
Really?
For about a week.
Damn.
If you've ever been kicked in the nuts before, it's like that feeling.
Did they give you meds?
Yeah, you have painkillers.
Okay, so it's not so bad.
I didn't take any.
Okay, well then also...
They would have helped.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's an out for people.
I'm just not really into painkillers.
For sure. Totally. Especially given their history.
And that's just like my personal preference.
Yep.
If you want to take them, they give them to you. So I took a week off work. I sat on frozen peas. And I read a book.
Yeah.
I just sat. And that's the thing. Prepare for that. Aftercare is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. It'll heal.
You'll never be there for
I've had no issues. Give it 2 weeks. Take time. Take it slow.
Yeah.
Really prepare with what you have. Decompress with what you just did. Because you probably are really hyper terrifyingly nervous coming up to this. You've done a ton of existential crisis work.
Yeah.
You've done a ton of thought process on this. You probably apologized to your bishop and your mom and dad and all the people you're going to fail, without being a parent.
Yeah.
And you apologize to Mr. Moneybags because you're not going to make more little industrial capitalists to feed into the workflow, But then it's like, take care of yourself. And then it'll heal. It's very much like a tattoo. If you get a tattoo, the next day I'm always
aftercare.
Because you just had your body just punched 1,000 times, millions of times.
Definitely.
Same similar thing. After about 4 weeks, they do a semen test to check to see if you still have any guys. And then after about 8 weeks, they do another one just to double check. Then I was cleared.
Easy.
And it's basically that's it.
Then you've given a beautiful gift. Less stress pressure
I
on
always joke that I
you.
say I'm cured.
Yeah, you're
I don't
cured.
change it anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, it's important, talking about like,
flippant, but yeah.
yeah, no, like the ability to relax now in sexual encounters for you where this is
That
not a
too.
running concern. That is a huge gift for yourself.
Now with this going, we can go back to not worrying as much
Right.
about those things. We have precautions in place for. It's like, this is now eliminated.
Which is a beautiful gift that I would imagine makes
There's
sexual
no
encounters
fear.
better because, yeah, you've removed that piece.
Like how many times is like someone listened to this podcast, like done the deed and then sat there worrying the next day they had to go somewhere and buy emergency contraceptive.
Yeah.
That fear, that money, that shame, whatever that shouldn't be an issue anyway. But they have to go through because our society is this way.
Yeah.
And it's like, now imagine that doesn't have to happen anymore.
Right.
So a lot of that fear is gone. It's just say use less stress.
Exactly.
I don't worry about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I forget I even have one.
It was worth
There's no change in color, volume, sensation, energy. My desire is probably higher now because that fear is gone.
Gone,
So
yeah.
Just free coins.
Yeah, let's go. Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing all this and sharing your whole story. I do have to ask you one more question that I ask everybody on the podcast. Sure. What is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
That's a great question. I think not having to live your life for someone else should be more normal. And I think it is normal. It's more like, I guess, do your research on your own self and reflection to understand if those influences are actually good for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need and what your needs are. And it's so much like not even questioning the systems, because some systems are good. It's challenging whether those systems are right for you. And it's kind of like, be yourself. And it's very reductionary to say be yourself, but it's very much that. Find your own path that is what you need to be doing.
Thank you for encapsulating the podcast in one sentence. I might have been a couple of sentences. Right? But that's exactly what I hope this does for people is, getting to connect into other real humans who are just like, yeah, I questioned the system, came out, and this is what I'm doing.
Decondition yourself.
The status quo, not conscious objectors to the status quo. And you just were like, yeah, don't take the status quo.
I love the status quo.
Exactly. Make your own. Damn it. That's the point of the podcast, right? So I was like, yes, preach. That is a beautiful closing prayer. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, good. I'm glad.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, then subscribe for new episodes released every Wednesday, and follow us on Instagram at Modern Anarchy Podcast, where we open up a dialogue about all of these topics. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. And a special thanks to one of my favorite artists, Youll Smith, for the intro and outro song to this show.